welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Backhand Compliments with your hosts. Well, I'm Dan, and this is Greeny. Hello, Greeny.
You going, Dan?
Good, mate.
Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, you too. I'm starting to really look forward to these episodes because just a chance to sit down, have a chat, have a talk about Frisbee, be nerds. All the things that I feel is the spice of life. But Greeny, we've started to have story time at the start of these episodes, and I'd love to start there before we really dive into what we're going to cover today. Have you got a story for us today?
Okay, I might just pass comment on what I've seen from, because in this potty we're going to cover the leading tournaments past regionals towards nationals for the open division. So what I've learnt is something I've learnt a long time ago, and that is the best receivers in the game actually want to be handlers. Okay, so that's my thought for the day. And I learnt this in my first ever nationals because I was the receiver. I was the guy going long whenever the thrower got it. And in the semi-final, I remember I was expressing my frustration to the captain and the main thrower, Jim Garvey. And just, come on, man, throw it, after making yet another effort to the end zone. And he came up to me at the end of the point. He says, "Listen, Greeny, I understand your pain, but this is what happens as a receiver. You're going to make a lot of cuts for no gains, okay? Get used to it."
And those that know Jim Garvey, that accent is on point. I believe he hates it. But to be fair, that is like very close to how Jim Garvey said. And to his credit, not wrong. When you're a receiver, there is a lot of unrewarded running. And we could dive into that. But yeah, that natural transition, Greeny, from being a receiver to, you start to develop your throws and all of a sudden, maybe you're one of the better throwers. And so, you can handle now. And then, you're 6 years in and you haven't run downfield in a couple of years. It's interesting.
Well, and also you just learn that it's a lot more fun to have the Frisbee in your hand, and you can get a lot more of the disc if you're hanging around the handler space, receiving dumps because your man is marking you under. So that's where you end up, and it just gets harder and harder to just keep busting long all game.
Yeah.
Anyway, I saw that with the two best receivers in Australia being Sam McGuckin and Rob Andrews, and they were handling for Ellipsis. So, and once they've got that taste for it, like getting a lot of disc in a point and being around the handler space, you can't go back. And so Dingoes are going to have to find another couple of untainted receivers for the 2028 edition.
Well, look, it's a crime that those two found themselves behind the disc. And maybe it's because of the missing, Tom Tullett, who was such a force in the backfield. Like, there's handlers, and then there's, kids like Tom Tullett. Well, not a kid, but, those absolute legends that are the next level. They're not just, the guy mooching behind the disc. And I'm kind of thinking about how Tom Tullett changed his game over the years. And one of those things that he started doing was threatening the hardest cut to guard in the game, and that is the deep cut from the dump, where it was just up the far side of the field, and all of a sudden the poor defender's like, I thought you were going to get a reset. Meanwhile, Tom Tullett's like headed to the end zone. And I remember in a couple of finals, that was causing issues because he didn't catch it. Like, it didn't get thrown to him, but often he'd turn around and come under, and all of a sudden Tom Tullett's getting a 25-metre gainer with kind of free arms. So,
and he is also an excellent reader of the disc. And just a little shout out to Tom Tullett. This is the first season since about 2010, 2011.
No,
I think he started Colony 2012. Anyway, he is now...
He was at Nationals before that. Like, he played for Barefoot back in the day.
Well, that's 08. Really? Going back that far?
Yep.
We'll have to come back.
I remember the first time I became aware of Tom Tullett. It was at a tournament called Share the Love. It was held in Five Dock, and it was my first tournament with I-Beam. And there was this kid throwing these extravagant low release forehands from basically the splits. And I was like, who the hell is that? and he was playing for Barefoot at the time.
Okay.
That's
well, that has to be 08 because I-Beam started 07.
Yep.
08 was Barefoot.
Yep. Okay.
And it was a bit of a failed experiment, that team.
Barefoot?
Yeah. Then that transitioned into Thong.
Yes. Yep.
Maybe. Anyway, on Southside.
Yeah. There was a couple. And then Faculty was in there. Like, I think Faculty were poaching players left, right, and centre. That was... you can see the genesis of Sunder in Faculty's approach, which was let's draw in all the great players and then just stomp teams at Nationals. Anyway, I think we move on. We've put together a slideshow again because that's what we're doing here. All right, opens mid-season with compliments. Well, Greeny, all of the tournaments, all of like those big tune-up, warm-up tournaments are now done, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. We've had Canberra Cup, we've had March Madness, we've had the Goanna's invite. So they're the three post-regional lead-ups for the Open Division. I'd say the really disappointing thing for Mammoth from Brisbane is that thank goodness they got in Gold Cup because that's the only one they've played. Unfortunately, they got cruelled by Cyclone Albert, which cancelled all flights out of Brisbane. They made the call early not to turn up. So they've missed out. And I'd say for Sublime, that's the West Australian Perth-based team, that they only got to play March Madness, which they've been doing for a few seasons now. They only get one shot at a pre-nationals tournament. And I think they got a bit rickrolled with this one.
Yeah.
Because there was a Cox camp at the same time as March Madness, which sucked all the best players out of the teams. So they didn't get as good a run as they could have. Nevertheless, they got four games. Doesn't seem like a big return on their investment.
No, and we'll talk more about what happened because it was a bit of a mess this year, the open season. We'll come to that later. The question and then kind of like what I want to get from you, Greeny, is how important are these mid-season tournaments for your hopes heading into nationals? What kind of role do they play?
Oh, it's there's no doubt that they've got the obvious role of tuning up, working through your plays, learning how to play against these teams. But as we'll see, none of the teams could really bring their full side. Okay, Hoss at March Madness probably had their full side, but really all the teams are sort of struggling to get their full roster to any one tournament via injury or just whatever life
commitments.
Yeah. So it's been a struggle to this year. For the team. So it's an interesting one. It's post Worlds last year where a lot of the best players were playing in either Dingoes or Barramundis or whether it be Masters or whatever it was. Yeah. So and also you've got the shadow of the Crocs looming as well as under 24s.
Yep. Two big tournaments coming up. The Crocs being World Games and under 24s. Under 24s really has picked up steam. Previously it was the juniors, and the juniors would normally run on the same year as Worlds. But these 24s. What the other age group is? The 22s or is it 21s?
I think they're the 20s now, aren't they?
The 20s. Okay.
Yeah, Thunder.
I'm struggling to keep up with all of the Australian national teams. But something else, I was wondering. Because there seems like post-COVID, And that's 5 years ago now. But post-COVID, there was a real blast of enthusiasm on the scene where lots of people were playing lots of tournaments and it was just gangbusters and yes, we're back out of lockdown. It seems like there's a little bit of a lull or a burnout of energy in that, and people are starting to reprioritize ultimate versus the rest of their life.
Well, you're seeing that play out mostly in the women's division. There, as you would have heard in our other podcast, that there's a lot of female matching players who are not playing this season because they're a bit burnt out. And we've talked about Tom Tullett. He's hanging the boots up after an incredible career. He'll go down as one of Australia's best ever players. And he's in his mid-30s and he's hanging the boots up. Tom, you got another 20 years. I'm still playing at 56. And maybe he will return. But I've got a gut feeling that he will return, but probably not to the same competitive level that he reached. He'll feel the pang and the missing out on the social side, as we all do. It's the best sport in the world for being social. So but that's a big loss. And he also had an incredible run and just burnt out, just too much ultimate. Yeah. And I think also from Australia, we don't have a big scene, and there's a lot concentrated at that elite end, and so there's a lot of people spending a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of wear and tear on their body. So I think Australia in particular is affected by not just the concentration of the elite end member, but also the cost of travelling.
Yeah, because it can be expensive. This is a big country. One of the key tournaments in the calendar is Canberra Cup. It's been around for the last little bit, long-standing. Yeah. And this year they have a little bit of a logo, John. I wonder if they used generative AI for this.
It would have been, can you please design a logo with a Doctor Who theme? But no, you've got to hand it to Jason DeRoy, JDR as we know him, who puts this on, does a fantastic job, always with a sense of humour. It's been running from about 2019. I think it was a sort of a Div 2 thing, and I think from 2019 on, they've brought the Div 1 teams down looking for a run. But the key with this one, Dan, is for the first time, Sunder haven't come down. I think they're complaining about the hardness of the fields. So in actual fact, they were pretty good this year. The fields were quite soft thanks to a lot of rain, and they been working on the drainage. So this was the chance. Fyshwick, this is the Canberra men's team, have never won their own tournament. They've never won it. And they've always been overshadowed by Sunder beating them either in the semis or the final.
Yep.
And that's been the theme for all those years. But without Sunder, could they do it then?
This was their chance, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like... but as we saw... And I mean, Fyshwick United, come on, guys. Can you, win something, please? I'm a fan. I just want to see you guys do well. But they are ever the bridesmaids.
Yeah, it's...
When's their chance for the wedding? And like you say, I think this was their chance to get hitched because no Sunder, best opportunity you're probably going to get without, defeating the whatever it is, 6-time national champions or 7-time national champion club. But what happened?
Yeah, okay, well, there's a couple of stories in this. For starters, we look at Outbreak. So this is their big moment. They actually went to Dream Cup as well in Japan, so that was great. What a great opportunity for those young guys. But this was their one lead-in tournament outside of within Australia. But get this, they get seeded. You'll look at that list. There are 8. That's the Div 1 teams right there in their order of finishing. But Equinox and Stout, Div 2 teams who agreed to playing the Div 1 bracket to leaven the bread, if you like. They were seated below Equinox and Stout and weren't happy about it.
And rightfully so, probably.
Yeah, so they had a point to prove.
It's a fair amount of shade to be sent towards a Div 1 team saying, yeah, you can come, but we're going to seed you below two of the New South Wales Div 2 teams, who are Div 2 teams. Yeah. And I didn't think that Equinox or Stout had any kind of ambitions towards Div 1, did they?
No, they should.
Well, yeah, they should, but
they're a bit of a feeder team for Sunder, but yeah. So Outbreak, they'd gone to regionals, Southern, and come fourth. So they managed to hold off the other Div 2 teams in the Southern region, but they didn't beat any of the Div 1 teams. So they're feeling a little bit insecure about, are they really a Div 1 team? So the key matchup, of course, then being Crank. So as we said in our last potty, Crank got booted out of Div 1 this year, and this was their swan song tournament. So this is the last tournament. They said, boys, let's all stick together for Canberra Cup. We'll play Canberra Cup, and then we'll split up and go our separate ways. So the under-24 guys in Crank want to have Div 1 experience. They've all gone to Sunder Dice, as well as Kevin Dang, who also wanted to play Div 1. So the rest of them are like, well, we are going to do the dutiful thing and we are going to go to Div 2, take out Div 2, create the space there for Eastern Regionals to get the extra spot for the team winning Division 2. Now, the other little spicy thing amongst this is that the decision was made by AFDA to now give Adelaide or South Australia a guaranteed bid, just like WA, like Queensland, right?
Yep.
So now AFDA have been very lucky that during this whole period when this has been going on since 2017, WA and Queensland have been able to deliver teams that have definitely been Division 1 standard.
Mm-hmm.
And in the recent years, Outbreak have too. But this year, of course, they've been absolutely decimated, losing 7 of their players to the eastern states, which is a huge amount for any club to overcome. So the Crank versus Outbreak matchup is tantalising. Crank wanting to show that they actually belong in Division 1 and Outbreak wanting to show that they actually belong in Division 1, And it plays out that they meet in the quarterfinals of this very tournament.
Perfect. The script writers have been doing their research.
Oh, you could not script it better. And Crank win in double game point 11-10.
Perfect.
Oh, my goodness. And I watched some of that game. It was, surprise. It was very well spirited. No problems there. There was just a bit more polish on Crank. Crank's got a good team, And actually, Outbreak, their young guys really showed some toe and showed that it'll only take another season or two before their young guys will really be able to step up. I don't think as much as that could have been a heartbreaker for Outbreak. I think they actually came out feeling a bit more buoyed after the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, you lose on Universe Point. That's not the worst outcome. I think if you're going to lose on Universe, because it's such a small margin.
Yeah.
When you win on Universe, double game point, it's that could have gone either way, and you wouldn't say definitively this team's ahead of this team based on that result, because another day, a different result. And I think it's fascinating how this season has played out. Just with all of the intricacies, Crank obviously missing out because they didn't qualify, and there just wasn't enough spots. 6 doesn't go into 5. And someone misses out. The musical chairs, the music stops.
Yeah. Now, the other story we need to talk about here is Fyshwick. As we said, is their big chance to win their own tournament.
And then
Now they
I-Beam of all teams.
So they play I-Beam in the rounds. I watched that game. They beat them 15-7 or 15-8.
Which is comprehensive.
Right? They play a flat zone that I-Beam really struggle with, and it should be bread and butter for I-Beam given their elderly status, that's what they can lean on is their handling skills, but they struggle with this zone and got taken to the cleaners by Fyshwick. So, and then in the quarterfinals, Fyshwick, because they did well on their side of the draw, have Stout, which is my team, in the quarters and beat us 15-10, no problems. Newcastle have got Manly, and it's a barn burner of a game, but Newcastle win at 11-9. So suddenly, out of nowhere, I-Beam win a game, and they're into the semi-finals. They play Hot Chili. Now, Chile are missing a bunch of key players. So my own team, in our first game, we were a classic Div 2 team, Masters age, and we get within one of Chile, a frontline Division 1 team. But they're missing Gag, and they're missing Lippy, and they're missing Aussie. They've got Reggie Turner, their best receiver, hanging around the sidelines. He's got a hip injury. He's nursing. They're just missing James French. They're missing a bunch of really good players, and Newcastle gets over them. And that leaves Fyshwick then have to take care of Crank, who got through that incredible quarter, and that is another really close game, but Fyshwick get through, and that sets up I-Beam Fyshwick final. And I'd already was on the way home, so I missed the final. But, it was 14-12. Sorry, let me get the... Yeah, so the final was 14-12 to Newcastle. Unbelievable. And so they did film it, but it was interesting. I got the tape from... It took me ages to get the tape out of Fyshwick because they'd filmed it. Obviously, they didn't want to... None of them had seen it back because when I looked at the film, the camera was just showing one end, a sideline, and nothing else. So you can hear the game going on in the background and you can get no vision of it. So I don't know if that was some fancy editing by Fyshwick, but, there's no record of the game, unfortunately.
Right. But
killer blow for Fyshwick. They missed their chance to... ice their own tournament.
They've got to win something at some stage. They're too good.
Oh, look, they've been from the Harlequin days of 2009 through to 2014, where they had the likes of Mike Neal and John O'Holmes. That was a golden period. Matty Dow, and then they sort of went into a bit of a holding pattern. And now they've built right up again. They've got a great bunch of athletes. They've got a good system. But don't count them out. They were missing a couple of players for their own tournament. But importantly, they're missing Colin McHale that's coming over.
Yes.
I talked to Dave McManus, their coach, and I said, you will be defined by how well you're able to integrate Conor McHale into the team.
Yep.
Now, that was a bit facetious because, of course, any player who's just coming in for one tournament is going to be very freaking hard to integrate well. But if you can pull it off, so he's got two things there. He can, Conor McHale can play well. He plays a role and he plays it really well and helps in that sense. But also that he is motivating for the rest of the team. So giving them some resilience and some motivation. So if you can do those two things, they'll be a much better outfit at Nationals.
I remember the Mammoth Sunder final at Nationals, the year that Mammoth won, and it was largely on the strength of American imports that put Mammoth over the top, but got them from just that quarterfinal, semi-final team into being matching it with Sunder and putting them over the top. And that was the year that Jimmy Mickle actually came out and played for Sunder. So stiff competition, and Connor McHale, I was asking you about him a few weeks ago, is largely regarded as the best player in Europe at the moment. So that's a pretty big title given the size of the scene over there and the competition between countries. Like, they spend a lot of time playing at a national level. Like, Germany will get together and we'll play France, because it's literally 2 hours that way. Much like we drove for 4 hours or 3 hours to get to Canberra Cup, they'll drive 3 hours and then play a national level tournament or a national level pickup game. So it's going to be fascinating to see how he fits in, see how the European style gels with the the Australian style, such as it is, and I'm a fan of Fyshwick, and I want them to do well. And at the moment, it's agonising because they are so good, and yet they just haven't put the results together yet.
Yeah, and it's not to say they can't do it at Nationals. And
I hope they do.
And they had a good run last year, making the semis. So don't write them off.
Never. I am orange and black, or whatever their colours are.
Hey, well, so am I, right? Magically, I've turned up in orange and black. I mean, I couldn't have scripted that.
And full credit where credit is due. Good on the I-Beam boys. Showing up, consistent tournament, did the job, took home the title. Can't take anything away from them. Good on them.
And crucially, it was payment for the 4 rookies that have come into the team.
Yes.
They would have gained the most from that victory and can see that they can compete at the level. And, they're really stepping up, which is great. And they're going to go another step, obviously, with Nationals. But, really good to see for Newcastle.
All right. Well, I think it's time to move on to the next tournament. And that was March Madness. Greeny, I went on to ChatGPT and I asked it to create me a logo for March Madness. This is what it came up with. I thought, look, that looks all right. It's better than what they had, which was nothing.
Well, you talk about the AI, revolution, and they can't even spell.
I know, right? It gets worse the longer you look at it.
It's AI can't spell and it cannot draw hands. Yeah, that's what we've learned from AI so far.
Yep. And both present in our logo. But March Madness. So March Madness, that kind of got ruined. Well, not ruined, but it really got derailed, this tournament this year. Because March Madness has been the premier kind of, all right, everyone goes south and has a really good battle. Run by Ellipsis. It's been notionally one of the tune-up tournaments because Ellipsis is there. They run it. So this year, what happened?
Yeah, and they used to turn up, of course, to Canberra Cup, but they didn't want to travel, obviously, and wanted to have their own gig, and why not? You've got enough teams there, and if you can convince Perth to make their trip over and Outbreak. But this year, unfortunately, at the same weekend, Crocs training camp in the same city as that. And I actually suspect it was deliberate from Crocs so that they had enough good players there that they would have a good punching bag team to train against, which they did. They used some of these players to play against them. So, for me, that's a real kind of kick in the guts for Sublime. In their one journey over to the east, their one lead-in tournament for Nationals, they play these teams without their best players.
Yep.
But Dan, but they couldn't make use of that because they went 0-4 and couldn't beat any of the top teams despite having close results.
It's worrying, really, for Sublime. They come across, and there's all these understrength teams, and the Sunder team, Sunder Splice, which I don't think we've seen Sunder Splice before, but Sunder Splice is a combination of Sunder Slice and Sunder Dice, naturally spliced together. Nerds and their puns. Fair play. Love it. But they couldn't...
Sunder however you slice it.
Appreciate. Oh, that's good. They couldn't find a win, and to lose all 4 games. Are you panicking? Like, are you really worried about that, or is it just kind of like, it's pre-season, we're okay. We just need to come nationals, tighten a few things up. We're around the mark. What was your read on kind of that performance where they lost 4 out of the 4?
Yeah, they didn't get everyone over of their squad, but they do have quite a few younger players. Yeah, look, I think you just got to take the positives. You have to take the positives out. I don't think they'll be too worried about that. A lot depends for Sublime on what pool they end up in as to their passage to quarterfinals at nationals. They've shown that they can match it with any team, and they consistently do that. They get these really close results. I'd like to see them ice a couple of those.
And normally they do. Normally at nationals, Sublime ruins a top 8 team because ruins a top 4 team generally because they'll upset them in pool play, or they'll cop a quarter and they'll play out of their skins. Like that's been historically what Sublime have done, and I've watched them do it for the 10 years. So potentially a bugbear team for someone.
Yeah.
If they can ice one of those games.
Yeah, so they didn't have Kylo because he was in the Crocs setup, and he's obviously a key player for them. Jackson is their captain, but he was there. So look, I'm not too worried. The real winner from this invite was actually Ellipsis. So Ellipsis win the thing, but they do it without Bill Foreman, John O'Keefe, Rob Andrews, Sam McGuckin, Max Halden, and Angus Wicks,
which is basically the top players. If you're drafting from that team, all of those players are in it pretty soon. Like you pick them, So to do it under strength, huge signs. Yeah,
and importantly, what it means is because remember they lost quite a few of their younger players from last year and have had to replace them with younger players. But for them, that was really important that they showed up. The other important thing and a win for them was that it was the first time that John O. McNaughton, so J-Mac, that he was able to play. He's been injured, and this was his first comeback tournament. He didn't play all the games, but he was able to play. He's on the D-line. He's going to be crucial for them at nationals if, as we predict, there's going to be a bit of wind. To have him on the D-line, he's one of the best into-the-wind throwers Australia's produced. And then you've got John O'Keefe and Ollie Lockman going down for the O-line. So, that to have J-Mac back and running was very important. So Ellipsis were the real winner coming out of this. Sunder, unfortunately, it was just getting their legs going because there's no team building you could do when you've got a combined team. For Jugger, good results, and they had the most complete team there in terms of rosters. So that would have been very encouraging for them to have their full roster out there, but concerning that they still couldn't beat Ellipsis, even with missing all their best players.
All right. Next. So I asked ChatGPT to do us a logo for the Goanna's invite, and this is what it came up with. It was basically just the last logo with a Goanna on it, And look at this little guy here. He's just having a bit of a chill. He's having a great time.
Wow.
I think
more like a spotted quoll.
I think ChatGPT, the gift that keeps on giving. But the Goey's invite ended up being the tournament, didn't it? Because everyone was here.
Yeah, and Sunder could split their teams because, they're terrible. They're a terrible travelling team. They really struggle to travel for whatever reason. But they managed to get reasonably complete rosters for Dice and Slice. So that was important. You had the return of all the top players for Ellipsis, which is a scary prospect for the rest of the division. I-Beam were there, Fyshwick were there. Fyshwick were missing a lot of players. So just looking at the Fyshwick squad, they had a very short lineup. They were missing Abdul Sadiq, Dane Kluken, Justin Byron, Matthew Spartos, Mambo Weir, Nick Hudson, Ollie Spinwheel, Patrick, but it goes on and on and on, Rob the Hollander. So they were missing a lot of players.
A lot of their top level talent.
Yeah. So unfortunately, they were a bit under weather, but the other teams weren't too bad. I-Beam were a bit down on numbers. They picked up Callum Faulkner on day 2. They also picked up Max from Mammoth for the tournament as well. So a little bit underdone. I'm missing Rob Merck, who's a big in for them, and also LJ. I'm probably missing a couple there. So the results-wise, if we look at... So the other thing about this tournament, of course, just like March Madness, there was a representative theme, and this was Goanna's invite. So the whole idea was that the under-24s, Goanna's, Australian team, and the New Zealand... Now, Kias, or what are you gonna say, Dan?
I think it's Kaya. I googled it to try and check the Kiwi pronunciation. I think it's Kaya. We'll have to check that. Someone please fact check me. Send me a tweet or something.
Yeah, but you'll need to do it as a vocal. So let's say the Kayas, so the under-24s, they got to get some good runs in against Div 1 teams. And they didn't do too badly. So obviously they did get beaten by most of the teams. They had a showcase game, which the Goannas took out 12-9. And unfortunately, a terrible injury to Edison Wong did his ACL.
The unholy trio.
Yes, that's right. I think it was, I haven't seen the final diagnosis, but I'm pretty sure it's ACL, medial, and the meniscus. So that unfortunately puts him not only out of Sunder this year, but also out of the under-24s. And this is a kid who was in the... So he made it to Asia Oceanic Championships with Thunder and was in the team for 2020 for Thunder, right? But then that got cancelled. And that was his chance for Thunder. Then roll forward, here's his chance for Goannas, and now he's crippled by this injury. So, and he's from Sufa, which was my old club, Sydney Uni. So, look, really sad for him, but I've been through this, and he's just got to realise that there is the salve to these injuries is recovery. And doing your reps, doing all of your exercises and your stretches to get back in, and that's what keeps you going. So, look, really looking forward to seeing him coming back next season. But, unfortunately, he, in that showcase game, had that terrible injury. He was back on the sidelines with his crutches, supporting the team through their remaining games. So big props to him.
In terms of the kind of pool play results, there's nothing really too spicy in there. I think probably the only real spicy one was Kaya getting up over Sunder Dice 11-10. That's a bit fun.
Now And let's take a moment to just remind us that Sunder Dice, I'd pretty much written them off, and as we both had after seeing them at the Newcastle Gold Cup and hearing that Mark McClay had done his hamstring, their captain Dennis Tran had destroyed his ankle. At regionals, Jimmy breaks his thumb. Jimmy Todd Hill. Tex wasn't around, and they were decimated as usual by injury, and we did cover this in the potty. But since then, so at this tournament, you saw the return of Mark McClay looking pretty good. The return of Dennis Tran, okay, in the handler space a lot, but he's out there and he's leading, looking good. No sign of Jimmy. Don't know what the story is there, but he probably still nursing his, sucking on his thumb. And they have picked up the under-24s guys from Crank and also Kevin Dang.
Yeah.
So they're looking complete, and they've integrated the Crank guys really well. They're looking really good. So yes, they lost to Kaya. But they they beat Slice for the first time. And in their matchups that they get to play each week, Dice had been losing all of those, but suddenly Dice gets it at 1 over Sunder Slice. So that was in the quarter, so they won 14-11, Dice over Sunder Slice. If we look at other, you got the results there you got the pool results. So just the other quarter-final results. So Ellipsis, here we go.
Well, I don't have the quarters. I only had the semis and above. But I think before we move on to the quarters, like the other spicy thing that kind of happened, Fyshwick beating I-Beam 15-11. Why couldn't you do that a couple of weeks ago?
If we look at looking at their last 3 results, Fyshwick 15-8. Final of Canberra Cup, I-Beam 14-12. Then Fyshwick 15-11. How do you bookend that, and not take the title anyway?
And like Fyshwick as well, beating Juggernaut, like they just win something, boys. Like that's all I want. I will die a happy man if Fyshwick can win something, because they're too good. Juggernaut having a real rough time losing both to Sunder Slice and then to I-Beam, who I would have thought Juggernaut would be pretty well matched against I-Beam, but I-Beam got the wood on them there, 15-12 in pool play.
Well, that game was televised. I got to see that. I-Beam went a run of 9 straight offensive holds.
Okay.
9 straight offensive holds, and Hoss just couldn't match that. So that was really good from the I-Beam if they can produce that sort of. It was back to the old I-Beam, no mistakes offense.
Yeah, which is what it was known for a number of years there. It was just like, they don't really give the disc up, and then they work really hard on defense, and it's a bit gross, a bit sweaty to play against. So that was pool play, and then we kind of moved on to the quarters. What happened in the quarters, John?
So then it didn't go to a straight quarter because only the 8 teams. So you had Ellipsis beat Fyshwick 15-8. We described Dice over Slice. So that was your semi. But so here we go. Yeah, and so in that 3-4, Sunder Slice gets up 15-7 over Fyshwick. Now that game was also filmed. A lot of drops. I don't think either team will want to look back on that tape and take a lot out of it because it was a pretty scrappy affair. Neither team could really connect on their long shots. And Fyshwick also showing signs that they're relying too heavily on Andrew Jackson to make plays to get him out of trouble and to go long. So, yeah,
I'm noticing that I've got the wrong Sunders in all the wrong places on this graphic.
Yeah.
So the final was Sunder Slice.
No, Dice.
It was Dice.
Yeah.
It was Dice v
Yeah.
Ellipsis in the final. Okay, it's just the scores then that I've got backwards in the semi. So Sunder Dice beat Sunder Slice in the semi 14-11.
Yeah, and how good was that for Dice? To turn the tables all season they've been losing, and then they get one over their brethren.
Yep.
I think in that game Alex Gann was misfiring a bit.
Yeah.
So he'd missed the Saturday.
Uh-huh.
He played the Sunday, but he took a little while to get back into his groove. But I saw him obviously in the final, and he looked pretty good there. So you're not reading too much into that.
Yeah.
So before we get to the final, so the fifth place bracket was interesting because you had Hoss versus the Goannas, and Hoss took them 14-10. Then you had the Kaya beat I-Beam. Now that game was filmed. Goey's was filmed. But in that game, that was a real shock to I-Beam. I think they really fancied their chances on the Saturday night of taking Kaya theirs, but that didn't happen. But then to make matters worse, in the 7/8 bracket, the Goannas beat I-Beam 13-7.
Wow.
Now, I did watch that game. That game was filmed. There was one point there. I mean, the conditions weren't too bad. A little bit wet and a little bit of breeze, but not too bad. Certainly not unplayable. I-Beam in one point, had 7 turnovers. And, Goey's obviously had a similar number, but I-Beam lost that point. They were looking terrible, and I don't know if it was fatigue, but they definitely ended in a whimper in that tournament. Meanwhile, in the 5-6, Kaya get over Hoss 13-12. So that is a great boost for the young Kiwis. And then now let's talk about the final. So Ellipsis beat Sunder Dice 15-11. And as I presaged in my story at the start there, Dan, the really surprising feature was to see Jono, Rob Andrews and Sam McGuckin handling against zone. So Sunder played a lot of 2-3-2 zone, and it looked terrible. It looked like at the start of the game, Ellipsis were just walking through this thing. But then it started to work for him, and actually, so Ellipsis took half 8-5, and were looking pretty good, and they were just punishing the mistakes from Sunder. Sunder could not connect deep at all. But then they got in after half with that same zone. They got 3 breaks in a row, 10-all, and they were really. I think they were overconfidence errors from Ellipsis. They were missing Ollie Lockman, so that'll be a piece of the puzzle for the O-line.
Oh, very much.
That they'll be able to use going into nationals, and that could change the whole outlook of it. And you might actually get, Rob and Sam downfield. Actually,
I mean, the role that Ollie Lofton plays for Ellipsis has always been that gap filler. Like he's the cog that keeps the wheels turning. Much like Xavier Black for the various Sunder teams, he's the guy that keeps the wheels turning. And with him missing, it would have felt like they weren't firing on all cylinders. They would have felt like one of the cylinders is misfiring because Ollie was normally there, and because he's so reliable, nobody else plays that role because Ollie's already doing it, and Ollie's quick at it. So you can't beat Ollie to the role either. So, and then he goes missing, like he's not there. No one steps into that role particularly quickly, and especially if Sam and Rob Andrews decided that they're handlers these days. Downfield starts to look a little skinny because, like Sam McGuckin and Rob Andrews pull attention wherever they are on the field. People are keeping an eye on them because they are dangerous. And
it's a good point. And last year, what you saw when Ellipsis were faced with zones, you had Jono and Cuppers working in amongst themselves and with Ollie, but really they were looking for a crossfield hammer to an open someone behind the wing.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what they were looking for. But this was all small ball, through the cup with the big boys and Jono. And Jono was the glue. He was making that small ball work without Ollie there. But I agree with you. I think you'll see a different look with when Ollie returns. He was obviously coach of Goeys. That's why he was missing. Yes, so and for it was pretty disappointing end to the tournament, I think, for Dice, but they would have been very buoyed by the fact that they made the final.
Yeah.
So
especially given their season so far, which has been marred by injuries, and we'd written them off. I'll be open and say that I'd written them off, and that'll be reflected in my predictions when we do our preview show in the next week or so, ahead of Nationals later this month. It's shaping up to be an interesting Nationals. Like Ellipsis, by no means, they're good, but they're not bulletproof. They're probably going to be in the final. Who are they going to play? Probably Sunder Slice. Am I completely convinced? Heavens no.
No, yeah. And look, I've changed my predictions. The one prediction that I've changed since Gold Cup will be Dice. I think now they've had this tournament, they've integrated the Gong guys, they'll go away and get their fantastic reps. No one else gets club reps with their trainings each week better than Sunder.
No, naturally. Cross club rivalry, being able to play against potentially a semi-final team, that's valuable. Those are valuable reps. So in the lead up to Nationals, Greeny, we're going to see it in about 3 weeks' time. Will be Div 1. What do you think the keys are in the last couple of weeks leading into Nationals and kind of gearing up for the tournament?
I've told not that they listen, but I have told I-Beam to get out to Empire Park, get on the beach, and practice wind throws and practice some, try and get some wind and get some reps, just playing in the wind, getting it over to strong sides and playing from there, and also tweaking your zones. I do like the look of I-Beam's 3-3-1, but they'll you can also do more work on that. So I think that would be beneficial to teams to get some win. It's often the case that teams train at night.
Yep.
And on weekdays,
and that is the biggest. No that's the biggest difference, though, isn't it? Like, we generally play at night. League is nighttime. Everything's nighttime, and then you go play a tournament. It's during the day. Sun's out. Everything's different. The atmospheric conditions are different. The air is heated up, so it's going to be a fun one. I think. Who in this lead up has surprised you the most? Do you think?
Oh, definitely Dice. To overcome those injuries, that's been exceptional. I've also been really impressed with Ellipsis because with a big turnover, losing Tom Bissett and Roloff, and a few others from
they went to the Craigie Burn Pelicans, which is a new club in the what is that, northeast,
west,
northeast, I think. Craigie
All
Burn.
right, okay, I'll go. Not sure.
Testing my Melbourne geography. But a new club that has formed this year. They came to Gold Cup and they were very credible in how they were going about things. They're going to be a very solid Div 2 club, and depending on how they go, we may be talking about Craigie Burn Pelicans in Div 1. It's a road, but to lose Tom Bissett and a few of the others, they had some turnover.
Yeah, and I just thought that they would struggle But I think they have shown that they can win tournaments and do really well without their top players. And it's a whenever they get in trouble, they can just turn to their top 7, which is a world-beating line, and come back from any position. So I think they're still the firm favourites. They've surprised me with that, and losing Tom, as well.
Yeah, Tom Tullett.
So apart from that, I haven't changed my prediction from Newcastle Gold Cup. Apart from Sunderdice, I still got Ellipsis to take it out, but the stocks are rising for Sunderdice.
And they're credit to them in showing that resilience, because I think that was probably one of the worst starts we've seen to a Nationals campaign in recent memory. Like, I can't remember a team being decimated like that. And I'm overstating it. They weren't decimated in the literal sense of the word, but to lose, Mark McClay and
Dennis Tran,
Western Sydney's greatest athlete, Dennis Tran. Those are big losses to come back from leaders, and credit to the club. Resilience, a bit of fortunate circumstances when Crank didn't qualify, and they had to dandelion out to the various clubs. Before we close this off, Greeny, any final thoughts from this mid-season Opens check-in?
Oh, the anticipation's building. It will be a really good tournament, and you still got the X factor. How much wind will there be? I've talked up wind. I've based my predictions on it, so it probably means it'll be dead still the entire tournament. But that just adds some spice to what will be a great return to West Beach, Adelaide. First time it's been there since 2010.
Yeah. All right. Well, Greeny, thank you for joining me today. And on behalf of everyone, all of us here at Backhand Compliments, all 2 of us, we thank you all for joining us. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Make sure you turn on those notifications for wherever you're listening from, because we'll be back shortly. We've got another podcast planned for the next week or so. We're going to be running through a Nationals preview, you and I, Greeny. We're going to make some predictions. We're going to put the teams on the milk or wine leaderboard, and we're also going to have some memes, which will be good fun. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.